Hi, and welcome back to ConTinual. It's another episode of the panel room, and tonight we're going to be talking about tinkerers and mad scientists. I'm going to be your host, Jim Nettles, but before we dive down into my level of madness, let's see who else has decided to join us and jump into the lab. So, Doc, how about you go up first?
Hi there, I'm Doc Coleman. I write steampunk comedy adventure. My series, The Adventures of Crackle and Bang, is set in a parallel universe where steam power and mad science kind of rules the world. So I'm looking forward to talking a bit about tinkerers tonight.
Milton?
Hey everybody, I'm Milton Davis. I am a author and publisher, MV Media LLC, a publishing company that specializes in science fiction and fantasy based on African diaspora culture and tradition. I've written about 21 novels. I've published / co-published 11 anthologies, and my stories have appeared in various anthologies throughout the Omniverse, such as Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it's a really cool vampire book with Black vampire women in it.
I think it was Slay, wasn't it?
Slay, yeah, Slay.
Patrick?
Hi, I'm Patrick Dugan. I write the Watchers of Asteria, which is steampunk mixed with magic, and the Darkest Storm trilogy, which is dystopian superheroes.
Jenny?
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Dog Books. I also write under a variety of pen names and in every length and every genre. And book 17, Aliens Like Us, in the main series, which I swear to you is almost done, is set in the steampunk universe because my characters live in a multiverse.
Todd?
Hi, I'm Todd McCaffrey. Written somewhere in the realm of 30 books. I have recently written a steampunk magic fantasy series with my co-authors, the Winter Twins, called the Twin Soul series. We got about 20 quick reads in that. I have an alternate history fantasy set at the end of World War I. And recently I've been off writing my own in the very crazy universe of the Canaris Rift series.
Nancy?
I'm Nancy Northcott. I write the Board King's Honor historical fantasy series for Falstaff Books, and that'll be finishing up this year. I also write the Outcast Station science fiction mystery series with Jeannie Adams, and I independently publish several subgenres of romance. And the mystery series that's spinning off this summer has several tinkerers and inventors in it.
And Jean Marie?
Hi, my name's Jean Marie Ward. I write fiction, nonfiction, and everything in between. The reason I'm on this panel is for one of my fantasy series, which is called the New Dominion Territory series. And there's a lot of madness, including scientists and other steampunk initiatives with magic in that particular world.
So as we're getting started, let's talk a little bit about why we all love the mad scientists and the tinkers. I can't understand why anybody wouldn't. For me, my first kind of influences along this line, would have been all of the, Dr. Frankenstein and all of the nice monster movies. And also, that little show called Wild Wild West, where I really was much more about play with the gadgets. How about you guys? Who kind of really set the tone and gives you a lot of the inspiration in the work you guys are doing? So Milton, I'll actually start with you on that one.
Cool. I guess I should have brought up one of the reasons why I was here is because I do have a steampunk series. It's my 10-book series, and it's based on an alternate America where the South is a country called Fredonia. And please don't do the jokes. But one of the things, yeah. No, you can't sing the song. Well, one of the things that I do in that particular story is that I kind of do an alternate history of African American culture within this whole country. And personally, I am actually a scientist. I'm a chemist. I've been a chemist for over 30 years. And I like just the whole concept of playing with the bringing to attention some of the Black scientists and engineers during that time and put them into the forefront of its alternate history. For instance, in my story, the Center of Technology in Fredonia is the Tuskegee Institute. And of course, Tuskegee Institute being run by Booker T. Washington, and the main scientist being there, George Washington Carver. So having that background and being familiar with George Washington Carver and being a scientist myself, and of course, like the Wild Wild West and other things like that, to me, the coolest thing about steampunk and steampunk is being able to create these gadgets and be able to come up with these machines that don't work, or even still having machines being created during a time period that they shouldn't exist, and come up with some crazy reason why they do. You know, so that's kind of where my energy and excitement comes from.
How about you, Patrick?
So I was trained as a genetic engineer at Fredonia. SUNY Fredonia, but still Fredonia. And then I moved into computer science. So I am a tinkerer at heart. I am a 3D printer and general maker. And so that just has always been, since I was a kid, I was always making inventions from Tinker Toys on up. So I just always loved to build things. And so when I started writing, it was like, I need to build stuff in my books. So steampunk was it.
Jenny?
My degree's in international business. I'm just going to bring it back over from the heavy sciences that are filling us up, because I just make stuff up and I write about it. But the beauty of that is that all the scientists and such put papers up, and the internet has made the world a wonderful, wonderful place, because I can find all the science I need as I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. I kind of fall into the viewpoint of it. Somebody said ages ago that the farther away from real science you get, the more believable it becomes to the average person, and the closer to science, the more like, oh, you're making it up. So I'm on that line of, yeah, there's science behind most of the science fiction I write, but you're never going to know about it. It's sort of, it's a spatio-temporal warp filtered through black hole technology, and we're done. And now we're off to other things. So that's one of the things I like doing. I get to send my characters all, yes, they have fast and light travel, because they do, and because somebody else on another planet has figured out how to do it, and my character doesn't care how, as long as it works. And that's kind of how I sail through life, really. And I like having the tinkers. I like the people that are doing it. You have to have those people, but they aren't my POV characters. And in my main series, in the Alien series, I actually have a character that Kitty has nicknamed the Tinkerer, because of his lifelong obsession with science and tinkering and what he is doing. And most of it is probably not for the benefit of person kind, but he's going to do it anyway. And he likes to imagine the possibilities. So he is a fun character to have in there, because I've always got the Tinkerer to rely on to come up with something really, really evil or great, depending.
How about you, Todd?
Well, I gotta agree with you on Wild Wild West. That was one of the seminal, mad scientist tinker things. I loved it. Jules Verne. And then a children's book, which some of you might remember, called The Wonderful Flight to the Mushroom Planet, which it was a Scholastic book pick when I was young enough to have Scholastic books. And it was a lot of fun. I've played with sort of the mad scientist steampunk thing in a number of places. I have a alternate history set in Scotland where my heroine develops a steam walking machine. Think like, the precursor to the AT-ATs in Star Wars. And she does it just in time to upset all of the United Kingdom's history. She puts Bonnie Prince Charlie on the throne of England. So that's fun. We also do something where we got steampunk in the Twin Soul series, where we have mages who work with physical aspects. So we have airships and more interesting things to come. That's been a lot of fun doing that. And I have one tinkerer who doesn't quite know what he's doing with himself. So, yeah.
How about you, Nancy?
Well, one of my first experiences with interesting tinkerers and inventors was Brainiac 5 of the Legion of Superheroes. He invented the flight ring, he invented the time bubble, he invented Computo the Conqueror that took over the world and killed Duo Damsel. I grew up reading Dick Tracy, and he had all those gadgets. And yes, the Wild Wild West was great too, but Brainiac 5 is the one who stands out for me because anytime the Legion of Superheroes needed something, he was on it. He had that nail cold. And I also like the way inventors and tinkerers have changed history. We just got back from the Outer Banks and we went to the Wright Brothers Memorial. And, you know, that was, 119 years ago that people didn't fly, and they did that. And it was really, really interesting. You look at the people who, Edison made electricity practical. I think it was Edison.
Tesla.
Tesla, yep.
Created AC.
Tesla's the one who didn't get the credit that he should have got. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Got it. And, you know, railroads, there are all kinds of things that literally changed the world because somebody had an idea and pursued it. And before that, it was Fulton and his steamboat. It's interesting the effect that inventors can have on the course of events.
How about you, Jean Marie?
Well, like everyone else, I grew up at the time when they were broadcasting Wild Wild West, but I think even more, I mean, I liked Wild Wild West because I wanted the train.
I wanted Robert Conrad, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Too short for me, too short. But, you know, the thing was that I also grew up at the time when they were making all these big budget versions of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells in glorious Technicolor. And you looked at that and went, why couldn't we have that now? You know? And also, I think that just about everybody here is the beneficiary, as Nancy was alluding to, 150 years of really mad invention. You know, it wasn't, and by all sorts of people we don't give the credit for, and there's so much we can do with that. I just recently, Milton read about the real McCoy, who invented the lubrication system that allowed them to have the trains that we see in Wild Wild West. And he was a black man, you know, and he was doing this and he had to fight for that patent. But it was the real McCoy, and that's the only one you wanted, and his name has become part of our language.
How about you, Doc?
Well, I'm another one who grew up watching Wild Wild West on Sunday afternoons. But another one of my steampunk influences was the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But for me, it's kind of a general love of that version of the Victorian era, because that was pretty much the last time in history where one man studying on his own could basically master all the different sciences known to man and then go push the boundaries farther. So a lot of my steampunk world is heavily modeled off of aspects of Victorian culture. Some of them were remarkable and delightful, and some of them absolutely horrific. And you've got to remember that the big thing about Victorian culture is that they were a study in contradictions. So there's always contradictions in there. But one of the favorite things that I did in crafting the world for Crackle and Bang is I gave the scientists a reason to be mad. My version of Queen Victoria has became concerned with the dangers of technology after one of her scientists invented the lightning rifle, which allowed Britain to maintain its stranglehold over the rest of the world. But she created a ministry of technological safety, whose job is to make sure that no dangerous technologies get out into the world. So all the scientists are upset because they come up with new discoveries. They have to send their paperwork in to the Mott's, and then they never see them again, and they can't publish anything. So you have a lovely, peaceful society on top, and you've got all this roiling unrest under. And it's just a wonderful playground for you.
And I think you just actually hit on two of my favorite, or the inspiration for two of my favorite tinkers, because you're talking about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and then we also have Q, all of which are inspired by the works of course Ian Fleming. So as we look at and talk about, famous mad scientists, famous tinkers, the people we've pulled into our works, are there real scientists that you've looked at and historical scientists and works you've pulled from that inspire your characters? Like, I am a big fan of both Tesla and I have to begrudgingly admit Edison, but it was because I've pulled a lot of articles talking about the two of them and the contrast between the two, and the impacts, and the small independent, almost pure mad scientist, but who was a brilliant creator, versus the guy who understood how to really create production science, and the shift between the two and the movement between the two. I've used Hephaestus in a lot of some of my different works and stories, pulling, and using Hephaestus, getting to play with modern creations and things like that. So are there either historical figures or somebody like that you have used to inspire the characters you guys are creating, and kind of how are you working that in? So Patrick, how about you?
I think Tesla is the ultimate for if you're writing steampunk. A lot of his machinery, a lot of his ideas, and he was basically just out-marketed by Edison. So I think there's a lot there. A lot of my some of my other ones, Darwin, I use a lot of his stuff being a genetic, starting in genetics, a lot of that stuff. Darwin versus Lamarckian theory is always an interesting, if Lamarckian is, if you don't use it, you lose it. So like giraffes have long necks because they had to reach up to eat taller leaves. And so, it just passed on magically to their offspring. So there's a lot of really cool examples of scientists that, had really kind of wild hypotheses that you can grab and, kind of use towards building your own stories.
Jenny?
Well, speaking of genetics, I'm a Gregor Mendel fangirl, and I made Kitty a Gregor Mendel fangirl, because genetics actually really matters throughout the series. But I didn't want to have to get into really high theory. That's what the alien women are for. So when we have to go into higher theory, they'll spout the actual real science, and Kitty's just back there with pea plants. But I really like genetics. I think it's very interesting, just like Patrick was saying. So I have a lot of Gregor Mendel work in. But otherwise, there's just so many to pick from that it's more, for me, I think it's more an amalgamation. That, that aspect of this person and this aspect of this other person, in terms of that, just because there's just been so, which is wonderful, which is why we're able to do what we're doing right now, because of all of these people, some known and some unknown, that came before. So I'm more of an amalgamation girl, but Gregor Mendel is who gets my shout outs.
Todd?
Oh, wow. I'm kind of more of an amalgamation, but there are a lot of, I've been thinking about this. You gave me time to think about it a lot. Bolton, Watt, Fulton, Ben Franklin, another good one. The Montgolfier brothers, who invented the balloons and all that. Of course, the Wright brothers, but they also had Otto Lilienthal, who was working on gliders in Germany. And going over to the sciences, you've got Priestley. Somebody was sort of all forgotten about is the marvelous Mary Shelley, who gave us Frankenstein. And that came about because they'd been doing experiments with electricity on frog legs and showing how they could reanimate a frog leg, which was itself rather interesting. We are in the 21st century. We're the inheritors of a lot of knowledge that grew. It's been interesting looking back at things and discovering that, when we discovered oxygen, isn't that, it's not all that long ago. And we had these marvelous theories about how heat transferred, including the amazing phlogiston, if you all remember that. But I generally sort of keep all of this stuff together and then, stir, mix, add spices and simmer. And that's where I go.
Nancy?
In general, it's an amalgamation, but the third book in the forthcoming mystery series, I just sent back developmental edits on, and it takes place in Paris during the Peace of Amiens. And at that point, Robert Fulton was in Paris working on his submarine and his torpedoes, which he fired by a harpoon. And the object was the harpoon would sink into the hull of the target ship. And then you pull on the rope that chose the torpedo and it bangs the torpedo into the hull and it detonates. In 1803, he had not had a lot of success with that. And I tend to not want to change history too much unless I'm changing the historical landscape. So I created another inventor based on a couple of people I knew who liked to tinker with things, and made him a rival of Fulton's. But I drew heavily on research about Fulton for that story. But in general, if I have somebody who's a tinkerer and a creator who's not a historical figure working in a historical period, then it's one from column A and one from column B and two from column C. But that's generally how I take it.
Jean Marie?
Well, actually, I'm more interested in the objects people have created than the creators themselves.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I know. So basically, I respect and am delighted that there are people like Fulton, people like Tesla, people like Galvani, the guy for whom a certain form of electricity was named. I'm thrilled they're out there, but my use of them depends on the story and what I need, and I'm more likely to be looking at the engineering problem in my head and trying to figure out how it could be done because I'm dealing in a secondary world than I am to seek out a specific creator as a model for any of my characters. But then again, that has to do with the fact that it's a secondary world that is not Earth-based, though it's recognizable in that it has human beings and they're doing things that we've seen people do in our own places and time.
Doc?
I don't really have scientists that I hold up as my models. I kind of go shopping for scientists when I need them to back up a particular invention or effect that I've created. And part of that is also because when I created the world for this series, I wanted to make sure that it was still strongly in the age of steam and clockworks. So I removed a lot of the electrical dabbling. They still have electricity, but it's very much in the unleash the lightning stage. They haven't really learned to deal with low voltages, low amperages yet. So they're like shocking the heck out of whatever they're working on, but they're getting surprisingly good results with it. But like in the Perils of Prague, my main characters, which are Professor Harmonious Crackle and his colleague Miss Titania Bang, they needed to do some work using sound. So I went and looked up a whole bunch of experts in sound, and I found names like Bernoulli, and I threw those in there, and I threw in a couple other names because they're different scientists of prominence in this world. And the whole story is told from a narrator who never really gives his name, but he doesn't know any of this stuff. So I can explain it to the reader by having them explain it to him, but he doesn't get all the details, and a lot of it isn't important to the action. So it's more like Genie. I'm more focused on what it's doing, how it's solving a problem or causing a problem than where it comes from. But I do take the time to try to make sure that the scientific principles line up, even if the technology is not really there to make it work right. As I said, it's where science and fantasy meet.
How about you, Milton?
Well, I'm kind of like Genie and some other people. I'm more of an amalgam type person when it comes to the science. There's no particular scientist that I focus on, with the exception of George Washington Carver. And that's because during, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, some of the, I say, more prominent intellectual Black people were focusing on the plight of the newly freed enslaved Africans and putting their time and energy into what do we do to help improve our own lot. And one of the reasons that George Washington Carver focused on agricultural things was because of the fact that farming was one of the main things that a lot of newly freed African Americans were working with. It was farming. And so, we always talk about the peanut and stuff. He came up with that, but he came up with so many other different things from an agricultural standpoint. Because before then, people used to use peanuts to feed hogs. That's basically what it was used for, that kind of thing. But I kind of look at and reimagine what he did and say, if he did not have this focus of trying to uplift, and working on that, what would he have applied his intellect to? And that's when I was developing Fredonia, that's one of the things I was thinking about. I was thinking about some of these prominent African Americans and how they were focused on the issue of race and spending so much time on that. But if they did not have that to focus on, and they were able to turn their intellectual abilities in other directions, what would they have come up with? And I also focus on it was a saying, I can't remember a way that one guy said, he said, I'm not really concerned about how smart Einstein is. I'm concerned about the number of geniuses that died in the cotton fields and sweatshops. And that's another thing that I think about when I write about Fredonia. What if you had this culture where everyone were able to exercise their intellectual abilities to their maximum extent without having to deal with, prejudice and racism, different things like that. And that's the reason why I set Fredonia in a situation where it's actually more advanced than the rest of the world, because you have a country where this equality is allowing people to excel. And so I'm taking a little bit of technology. I like to take technology that doesn't work and make it work, and don't really give a good reason why it works. Like the gyrocopters. There's a concept of the gyrocopter. I was reading about it. I was like, well, people were trying to figure out how to make a gyrocopter actually work. And I think it was like maybe in the last 20 or 30 years or so, somebody was actually able to come up with a concept. But in Fredonia, of course, it works there because they were smart enough to figure it out. And they call them dragonflies. That's what they call their aircraft dragonflies and stuff, So I don't give a good reason why, but I just say they were able to figure it out, that kind of thing. And I like to be kind of obscure on stuff like that when it comes to doing the science and stuff. But that's where, like I said, it's not so much Tesla, not so much Edison, even McCoy. It's more of what technologies that were prominent during that time, and how can I work it in a way where the culture that I'm dealing with is more advanced than the rest of the world because of how they're able to utilize their people and in application to their techniques and stuff like that. So,
well, let's actually talk about some of the toys and gadgets since we're going down that path. I'm going to make Jean Marie happy for once. So if we look at how we pull and use gadgets in, because they, when we pull something in, it's really easy often to just say, this is the MacGuffin of here's what it is. I mean, if we think about Pulp Fiction, you open the case, you never knew what was in the case. You didn't care about what was in the case. Other times we bring in the science, the technology, the things we create really become critical to the story. And I think that's the times that the tinkerer is so much more fun, is finding the way to get down to the device. Or sometimes it's just they walk over to the closet and go, oh, you need a thingamawhat. Yeah, I got 4 of those. What color do you want it in?
Mhm.
Why do you even have that in the closet? You know, those sorts of things. What is your favorite, I'm going to call it whatchamacallit thingamabob, with gears, lights, switches, bombs, whatever else that it may have in it, whether it's one you've created or whether it's something that, you know, somebody else has created, but it really also had to play in to be critical to the story. So Jenny.
I'm going to go with one I created, and that is the gates. Gate technology was created on Alpha 4 in the Alpha Centauri system. Remember, science fiction. And the gates can move you wherever you need to go. You have to calibrate them correctly, but they can take you any over the world, and they can send you off the world if they really want to. But there's actual physics behind it, but you'll never have to worry about that in any of my books because it's a spatio-temporal warp filtered through black hole technology. But it allows them to move, and you kind of like you can almost feel the world rushing by you. But they don't have to take planes. They do occasionally, but my characters, once you're in Centaurian division, you don't have to take a plane. You can take a gate wherever you're going, and they're very integral to this. They're integral to the story, whether they're using a gate or not. There's times when they're not supposed to use a gate, which is instantly, why are you making us travel in a way that we don't normally go? The gates are really useful. They're useful as a method for a variety of things, including they make Kitty sick to her stomach. It's just something like the Anna Chilter-World. It's not something she likes. And so the gates are, they're great, but they're the bane of her existence. So I really like them. They look like I said, they look like an airport metal detector, but they allow you to go through. And what hasn't been shared is that the tinkerer actually is who created the gate technology, and the characters don't know that yet. Actually, no one in the series knows that yet, but all of you listening now know. Ooh, spoiler.
Spoiler alerts.
Spoiler alert.
Coming in the next book that will be out eventually when the paper starts
Eventually,
rolling.
yes, we find that out somewhere down the line.
How about you, Todd? What's your favorite gadgetry?
Oh gosh, that's hardly fair. I mean, immediately I go back to the Future. I mean, nothing like an 88 mile an hour, time machine DeLorean. And if you're going to have something, you got to have style. I want the one with the Mr. Fusion add on though, because you got to do it right. Wow.
And the Levy
As seen on TV.
Yep. I had a lot of fun with the Steam Walker, where my heroine is basically building this steam walking machine that ends up changing the course of history, because it helps the Scots have their rebellion. Actually, of course, for them, it's not a rebellion now, it's a restoration, and throw out the German kings, George II, I think we got. So I had a lot of fun with that. But I also have a lot of fun with the airships that we put into the Twin Soul series. We have an airship that lifts because of magic, but it's sort of a physical-based magic. Our magician evacuates the air from inside the balloons without the balloons collapsing because it's magic. And then you get lifted up to the level of as high as you need to go. So yeah, there's a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I guess that's me. Done.
Nancy?
I'm going to pick the Legion of Superheroes time bubble because you can go anywhere in it. You can go to the past. I don't remember them traveling to their future, but that's not to say they didn't do it. And I think that would be so great because I would love to know what happened to the Lost Colony. I would love to know what happened to the Princes in the Tower, because I think it's a royal household. The tower's a royal palace. I think they packed up and moved. And then Henry VII came along and I could do a panel by myself on that, so I'll stop at that. But the Legion of Superheroes time bubble would help me know what happened to all these things. I could go back and see the Wright brothers take their first flight. And the people on the ground can't see the time bubble. So it's not like you're tinkering with history by showing them this invention that they don't know exists. I'd love to go watch the invention of moving pictures.
For a while.
Yeah, I mean, the time bubble, I'll take the time bubble. I really like Gini's gates reminded me of Stargate SG-1, although they're different kinds of gates. They don't work on the same principle. But the problem with the Stargate is you're go old on the other side of that. And you walk through that gate and you're in trouble. And frankly, I would just rather be in the nice, safe time bubble, watching it all from above and not being able to be seen by those people. So I picked the time bubble.
Jean Marie?
Okay, well, the world that I've created for the New Dominion territories is sort of on the cusp of the 20th century. So we've got great things. We've got trains, we've got dirigibles and airships, we've got the ability to use clockwork and something called magicanical, which basically marries magic and mechanicals to do things. But I will say that my favorite use of technology in that arena happened in the first story I wrote in that world, The Wizard of Woodrow Park, where the technology that defeats the antagonist, I won't call him a villain because he isn't, is a static electricity generator, a crystal rod, and a lake of Chihuahua urine.
Do it every time.
That's a lot of chihuahuas.
Nice remember.
I only need one, honest. They're like TARDISes. They're bigger on the inside than they are on the outside.
Doc, I'm afraid to ask after that one.
Well, I have a somewhat different view of technology, I guess, because usually if I'm introducing technology in one of my stories, I will show you the thing, I will show you how useful the thing is, and then I will promptly break the thing so I can show you how resourceful the characters are solving the problem that would have been easy with the thing. But there are a couple things that I've introduced in my world that are kind of gadgets that I love. And one is the lightning rifles that I mentioned before, and there's also a lightning pistol version of it, which is like a one-shot devastation device, because it packs a punch, but it can only do it. It's a trick it can only do once. I guess another thing that I dearly kind of love is my characters travel around in an airship, and they don't bother landing the airship anywhere. That takes way too much time, and it's so messy getting clearances and stuff. So they built a lift into the bottom of it. So you've got a circular platform on a single steel cable with this sort of tower arrangement in it, and when you go to leave the ship, it just kind of, the floor drops out from under you, and you find yourself plummeting down towards the ground. But they've engineered the system so that they zeroed in exactly how far it is, and they start braking in time that it ends up dropping and hovering right there about a foot above the ground. And you never fly off because you've got steel plates inserted into your shoes, and there's an electromagnet underneath the platform that activates as soon as it drops. So getting off of the ship and getting back onto the ship are always roller coaster rides. But that was one of the fun things that I came up with.
I tell you, if Dune was a steampunk, I just pictured fishing for sandworms. So Milton, how about you? What what grand tinkerings, toys, mad science inventions, what's the thing that has really, pulls you back every time?
I'll be honest. I love that movie, The Time Machine. That whole the whole concept of the machine that he made and how it would take him forward back in time in that same spot. And I really thought it was cool when he got knocked out and just went like 20,000 years into the future, that kind of thing. I just that movie, every time that movie comes on, I watch that movie because I just like that whole concept of the machine and stuff. As far as my own books, I have my first story I wrote in the Fredonia world is called The Escort, and that's when I introduced one of Fredonia's advanced technology is their steambots. Their robots that they have. But the thing about it is that the robots, their minds are basically wheels, they're gears. And it's almost like I'm old school, so I remember when we used to program computers with punch cards. We had to write them out and then put the punch card in, and then we run the program. And that's kind of the concept I used for the robots in Fredonia. They had wheels, and a escort, which they called them that, had to carry a bag of wheels with them. And depending on what you want the robot to do, you had to put a different wheel in. So if you wanted the robot to do this thing, you had to put this wheel in. If you wanted to do that thing, you had to put that wheel in. And in this particular story, of course, you have the thing where the machines are not supposed to harm people. But however, every escort has a wheel that if you put that particular wheel in, then all bets are off. And in this particular story, that's what happens. The person is their life is being threatened, and they actually get in contact with, because George Washington Carver still controls all this stuff. And they say, what do I do? He says, well, go into the bag and take this particular wheel out and then put this wheel into your escort and you'll be fine. So that guy. So I like that concept. And I show as we go along in the series, how the technology advances, just like we advance with computer technology, the wheels get smaller and smaller. And the hopefully is at some point, hopefully will get to the point where we won't need the wheels at all, that we'll actually end up developing a mind for these robots and stuff. But I just like the process of how I start with that particular story and start to evolve it as it goes along. So.
I have to tell you, I, for one, welcome our future robot overlords, but I do kind of like the idea of having a wheel I could pluck out. Patrick?
If it's somebody else's stuff, that's the Whopper from War Games. That was kind of my first influence in computer science-ish fiction, fantasy, if you want to call it. In my books, it's Quinn's mechanical arm. So Quinn is a blacksmith who gets his arm cut off and has to figure out how to fashion a new one so that he can stop the bad guy from taking over. So that was a lot of fun. We were watching way too much Forged in Fire at the time. And so I came up one night with, that would be really bad if you lost your arm as a blacksmith, and it kind of went from there. So, but all the gadgets he builds into his mechanical arm to help him get through these adventures is always fun.
So, one of the things that we always look at when we look at the scientist, the tinkerer, the builder, the creator, the constructor as character, especially when they're critical to the story, one of the things I always love to watch is to see how everyone else reacts to him. Is he the savior? Is he the person that the villagers are now lighting the pitchforks and the torches to stand at the gates and go, no, we don't know what you're building, but come on out? Is he someone that is doing so within whatever the religious structure is? Is it someone who is doing it against the grand order, whatever that might be? So what are the things to you that really create that well-rounded scientist, tinkerer, creator, or even more fun, the mad scientist, my personal favorite? What are the things that make him or her, make them that character? And what are the influences that you like to see? What's your big favorite? So, Todd, how about you?
Oh, wow. I'm still trying to come up with an answer.
Welcome to
Um,
Under the Bus.
what?
Welcome to Under the Bus.
Oh, hey, cool. We like the bus. Yes, it's fun. It feels really good down here.
Make sure to change the oil while you're down there.
No, wow. What I just make them, you know, they do what they need to do. They come along and they say, hey, I've got a solution to this problem. And you know, it's an amalgam of a whole bunch of people. So I think that's kind of, you know, where I am. I like my mad scientists. They generally get along with people, sort of, except, you know, they do find people kind of strange. Yeah, okay. It was a good bus ride. Thank you.
Well, and I think that's a good question, though. You know, is the tinkerer somebody who gets along with everyone else, or are they somebody who is, in some extent, separate from everybody else because they're all still a little bit suspicious of the guy that can build, you know, the lightning gun, put the cog in the wheel into the robot that'll make them do the things that you don't necessarily want them to do. You know, we've seen a lot of things. I mean, talking about robotics, AIs, we've seen a lot of, you know, them go mad. You know, the creations go nuts.
Well, yeah. In the Steamwalker, my heroine is accused of having an affinity for steam and steel, and probably inspired by some dark force. And we're in Edinburgh in 1745, so of course that's not a good thing to do. But you know, she's driven by a vision. She's driven by her own success, by her desire to show everybody. And also she doesn't want to marry the evil blacksmith, so I can totally get behind her. And yeah, people don't quite understand her, and she doesn't quite understand that. And by the end of the book, her world was turned completely upside down, and not in a good way. So, I can speak to that a little bit, but that's about as far as it goes.
Nancy, how about you? You know,
well, I think it depends on the role the character plays in the story. If the character is the central character, then of course you're going to layer more into their personality and their background and their dealings with other people. For mine, they're secondary character. So they're either the inventor in the Conspiracy's Web, the Piece of Amiens story, is a secondary character, and he's kind of a loner, and he's being underwritten by the French government. So how well he gets along with people is not really an issue. He's kind of trying to get out of France because he didn't realize they were going to use his inventions for war material. And I did that deliberately to contrast him with Fulton, who was quite happy to create war material and hoped to be paid well for it. So I think it depends. The book after that, Skywatch, takes place in 1940, and part of it deals with the establishment of the chain home radar network. And at that point, the network is up. It's running because that's just what worked best for the story. So it's mostly, do the inventors get along well with each other? And I think probably there's going to be some friction there, but they have an incentive to get along well with each other because Germany is right across the channel, and Hitler's amassing boats in Boulogne and Ostend and all these other places. And if the Luftwaffe takes out the RAF, those boats are coming over. So it's kind of circumstantial to me. It depends on what role the character plays in the story and what the surrounding circumstances in the story are.
Jean Marie?
Sorry about that. I was muted, but basically it depends on the character. And I mean, I've got a whole raft of people that could be called tinkerers and inventors and mad scientists. And who they are, what their motivations are, depends on the character. Some characters in the sciences are exceedingly well adjusted. They have very boring lives. And, you know, you only notice them when they are rewarded for their work. Others are flaming eccentrics. You know, Tesla comes to mind. So it depends on the character themselves. There's one character, the Wizard of Woodrow Park, the guy who wields that crystal staff and gets it charged. He's very, very well adjusted. He's also an alien, but that's just a minor thing. But yeah, in a story that I'll be starting to commit to paper in a few days, we've got a real Dr. Frankenstein who was probably kind of shaky before his wife decided to succumb to consumption, but after she did, he's really around the bend. So, and there's all shades in between, just like there's all shades in between. You've got Einsteins, uh, you've got Marie Curie, you've got uh, George Washington Carver. You've got all of these variations in the real world. Why shouldn't you have the same variations? Now, the only thing that I can say definitely a tinkerer or quote inventor, and I'm going to use those quotes in for a reason, is guaranteed to be an asshole. And that's if they are not really the inventor, they're just taking all the credit. Hello, Elon Musk. So, there's just a whole spectrum there. And who they are as characters, who they are in the story, as other people have said, determine how far out there or how acceptable / unacceptable they are to the readers.
Doc, how about you? What makes for you that good mad scientist, that good tinkerer, whether he's the protagonist, the antagonist, what is it, that you really want to see, or what you really wanted to put into them to help bring them out and make them well-rounded?
It really gets into why does this character do what they do? For instance, Professor Crackle is just fascinated by the world, and he wants to learn as much about it as he possibly can. So he travels around pretty much constantly, looking for interesting things, and it also kind of turns out that he's an ADHD person in an era before they came up with a diagnosis for ADHD. So this is his own coping mechanism that he's built about it. And it leaves him a little scatterbrained and leaves him thinking about things that are just a little bit beyond his reach. But he always has a lot of enthusiasm that drives him forward, and he can get into doing experiments and he gets hyper focused. And then you've got Miss Bang, who is another fellow scientist, but she's much more into she's much more aware of the cultural aspects. You were talking about how do people relate to these before. It's like Professor Crackle doesn't really pay homage to society much, or he gets it wrong and he figures it's somebody else's fault. But Miss Bang is there to make his apologies for him. And in a certain sense, because it's Victorian society, it's still mostly a male-dominated society, she kind of needs him too, because she can get stuff done if she lets people think it's the professor's idea. So she's always keeping her light hidden a bit, but throwing in choice ideas every now and then. It's like the dynamics I have with these characters I really love. But you take a good bad guy who's building death machines and sending them out into the world. Once you get into the motivations as to why they're doing it, that's what makes the character really interesting. Not just that they're a threat, but why they chose to become a threat to the world, and why that choice ended up expressing itself in these particular kinds of mechanisms, or biological monsters, or what have you.
Milton, how about you? What is it that makes a great tinkerer for you? What is it that you want to see in them? And
I think, like Gene said before, it depends on the motivation and what that character, how that character fits into the story. With the Timbuktu technology, actually, George Washington Carver is almost kind of like an M. He's there, but he's not a main character in the story. Everybody knows that the technology that comes from Fredonia comes out of his lab in Tuskegee Institute. And the people who are working with it are using it from a practical standpoint. And so he's kind of say not really a recluse, but he's just a person that's focused on his work and dedicated to the country from a point where Fredonia knows that their advantage and the fact the reason that they exist is because of their technological advancements, and they're ahead in the technological race with the rest of the world, and that keeps them free. So they're constantly trying to push and get to that next level of technology. On the other hand, you have Dr. Professor Dolph Erickson, who is a Prussian officer / also an academe. And he sees the technology as something, well, on the surface, he sees this technology as something that will help Prussia become a dominant country in Europe and throughout the world. But he gets himself in a situation where his superior officers think that he's wasting too much money and too much time. They've given him a chance to play around because his family's real prominent and they're very respected. They've distinguished themselves in battle and war, and even he has in the Franco-Prussian War. But however, he's gone too far. And when he gets to the point where they will no longer support his experiments and his research, he's so obsessed with it, he says, well, he's already laid a plan to do it on his own. And that's when he breaks off and says, okay, I've got my people in place. We're going to get this technology and we're going to develop it on the outside, really to help, Prussia, but it's really come an obsession to him. And throughout it, we begin, and I'm dropping a bunch of spoilers, we begin in this first book with him trying to help Prussia. By the time we get to the third book, he's now in Brazil. And he's using that same technology now to help build Brazil and basically make Brazil what he felt like Prussia could have been, and that kind of thing. So he would probably be more like the mad scientist type thing, because he's become obsessed with this technology and making it work and taking the robots and making them killer robots and all that kind of stuff. Where you have the people in Fredonia that's like, look, we want to use the technology, but we want it to be balanced and we want it to be something that's going to benefit everybody. So, and there's another person in there, but I'm not going to talk about them because I've already spoiled enough. But
how about you, Patrick?
I think it's kind of what Doc was saying. Milton alluded to it as well. It's they're characters, and if they're one-dimensional, they're no fun. As far as how they interact with the other characters, I go back to the if there's a pit bull in a fight, you want it to be your pit bull. So when you're the one who's got the better technological edge, whether that's machinery or gadgets or whatever it is, you're going to use any advantage you can. In Asteria, they're fighting a two-front war against two hostile nations that are trying to wipe them out. So they don't care, go off and be a mad scientist. We don't care as long as whatever you're making keeps us safe. And so that's their drive for technological excellence is to kind of like Fredonia, you want to stay safe. It's a protection. It isn't a we need technology to dominate everybody else, although the other countries see it that way because it depends on your viewpoint and where you fall on the spectrum. They want to protect their people, and they will go use whatever devices they can to ensure that they stay safe and free.
Jenny?
Well, Kitty faces these kind of evil geniuses constantly. She calls them, the Megalomaniac League, or the League of Evil Geniuses, or the League of Evil Geniuses and Megalomaniacs. So most of these people don't necessarily view themselves as, mustache twirling evil guys, but they're smart and they're capable, and they've been influenced in many cases by an evil person who has moved them to the side of bad versus the side of good. Because the alien universe is a multiverse. Kitty's this book 17 going into the Steampunk universe. That's not her first universe switch. In her first one, in Universal Alien, she gets discovered that people she thinks are evil and horrible are wonderful humanitarians here, because they weren't affected by this one evil character who's still around in all the worlds. Some people, however, some people stay good, some people stay bad, and some people stay really, really bad. But all of them have the trait in common. They're really, really smart. And they view, it's how they view everyone else that is the issue. Kitty makes the comment a lot. Richard White, who was the religious leader of the aliens that were sent to Earth, is a very peaceful person, and he therefore did not allow these aliens, who are actually better than humans in almost every way, to take over, because that would be wrong. Whereas his father thought that would be the greatest. So some of it is just you were bent, and like everybody else is saying, to make somebody three-dimensional, most other than Dr. Evil, right, in Austin Powers, people don't wake up and go, what evil can I perpetrate today? It's what am I going to do today that gets me my goals? And these guys want to run not only the world, they want to run they want to run solar systems and galaxies. Okay, they want to control everything. Some of them because they think it's better in their vision. Some of them just because they want more power. They want to be doing this. So I just like, again, everybody said this. It's got to be what serves the story, how the characters serve the story. But they need to be, three-dimensional. They're not waking up thinking they're awful. All of these people have very strong emotional attachments to other people. It's just some of those other people are also bad. But I don't have any megalomaniac loners. I have no mad scientists that are working by themselves. They always have somebody else who they're either bringing along, like a son or a daughter, or a partner, because most people are not really working in a vacuum. There's always some guy there. Igor is there to hand Dr. Frankenstein what he needs. Igor is an important part of the whole process. So I don't really do them as loners, and I can enjoy the trope when I'm reading it, but I really feel like they need to be three-dimensional, even if you're only seeing them on screen for a very brief amount of time. And part of that three-dimension is that we're humans and we have relationships, with other people. So my League of Evil Geniuses are actually a league. They all ultimately all know each other, and their little cliques and their little this and that, but they all know each other. They all have each other on speed dial.
I see an opportunity here for merch. Well, so I've had the pleasure of being Igor this evening for this particular crowd. But before we get out of here, let's let everybody know where to find our crowd of evil geniuses here. And because I can, and because, well, I'm that way, we're going to do this in reverse order. So Jean Marie, websites, social media, and what's that latest release? And you're on mute. Technology
Sorry.
has defeated you.
We've been having a little evil genius problem here called the cat, who has been horking, and I didn't want y'all to be afflicted with that. But in any event, you can find me at jeanmarieward.com, thanks to Jim Nettles. I'm also on Facebook at Jean Marie Ward is my personal site, and my author site is Jean Marie Ward Writer. You can find me on the Hive of Scum and Villainy, that is Twitter, as Jean_Marie_Ward. And I have Instagram and TikTok accounts, but I don't use them as much as I should.
Nancy?
You can find me at nancynorthcott.com. I'm most active in social media on Twitter, where I spend more time than is probably good for me. I have an Instagram account, but I haven't done much with it. And I have an author Facebook page that I tend to forget I have. So the website or Twitter is the best place to find me. And on Twitter, I'm at Nancy Northcott.
Todd?
You can find me sort of on Facebook. Todd McCaffrey, there's going to be one or more of me. I have a number of pages there too. I'm also on Instagram, not much on Twitter, but I do live there, and you can also find me at toddmccaffrey.com Or if you're looking for books, go to Amazon.com and say Todd McCaffrey and see what comes up. There's some fun stuff there.
Jenny?
You can reach me at my website, ginikoch.com. I'm on Facebook a lot. I have a personal page, Gini Koch. You can find me as Gini Koch Hairspray and Rock and Roll, author of the Alien and Catherine Kitty Cat series and Paranormal Romance Dream Team. I'm also on Twitter a lot. There's only one other Gini Koch. If you hit her, she's awesome, and she'll tell you that you found the wrong Ginny and try again. And I'm on Pinterest. I look like I'm on Instagram, but I'm not. Please, please, please stop sending me messages. I have a thing. I can't get to it. And no, I'm never getting onto TikTok, and I really mean never, because I can make a video or I can write books. And we all know what everybody votes for on that.
Patrick?
I am at patrickdugan.net. And my newsletter is full of pictures of my cute dog, Blaze. I am on Facebook as Patrick Dugan Author. I am at P_Dugan on Twitter, where I often comment on Nancy's Darkwing obsession. And I am on Instagram as Patrick Dugan Author.
Milton?
You can find my publishing company under www.mvmediaatl.com. I have my vanity website, Milton J. Davis, but I'm hardly ever there and I hardly update it. So you probably think I was dead if you went there. I spend lots and lots of time on Facebook under my name, Milton Davis. Milton Davis, I think it's 52, because it's like about, I did a search one day and found there's like over 900 Milton Davises on Facebook. So if you see this and you recognize this, you know it's me. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Where else am I at? That's about it. But I have different names on different ones. I'm not as smart as the rest of y'all and just make the same name for for everyone. But on Twitter, you can find me out as the Griot, and that's the Griot with a T. The Griot with the 0 is actually the NSNBC thing, and you'll go to them. and I'm on Twitter as I'm on Instagram as Obadoro, which is a character from one of my stories.
And Doc?
Well, the easiest way to find my stuff is to go to your favorite search engine and enter Doc Coleman Steampunk. And that will find you my author page on Amazon. That will find you my website at doccoleman.com. It should also get you to my author page on Facebook, which is Doc Coleman Steampunk Author. Funny about that. There's my regular profile on Facebook, which is Doc Coleman, but I usually don't accept friend requests from people that I haven't actually met. And I'm on Twitter as Scalesley. That's Scales, Lea. And you can tell that you've got the right one because the name on it is Doc Coleman Steampunk Author.
Well, and I have had the great pleasure of being Igor this evening. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, at speculativefictionacademy.com, and of course, when they let me out of my cage here, ConTinual. So we will see all of you again soon. Have a good evening, everybody.